In the previous lesson, we organized our component directories. We can continue with shaping up our application by making the page_thread_show component lighter. The template currently displays the thread title and a list of the thread's posts. I think it makes sense to extract this part to another component. I believe post list would be a good name for such component. I will type it here to design the API of how I would like to use it. One idea for our post list component is to accept the ID of the thread, and then it will be responsible for finding the posts in our data source and displaying them. That would be perfectly fine. But I prefer to keep my child components more stupid, to say, so they don't have to do a lot of work. This way, it will be easier for us to debug or change our logic in the future if we need to. Thus, we can instead give the array of posts to the post list component directly. And then the post list will only be responsible for displaying the given posts. This way, we might also be able to reuse this component if needed to display a list of posts that are not related to a single thread. For example, we could use such component in the user profile page later on to display the posts a user has created. Maybe here it's a good idea to call the local data we give to the component thread posts, so it's clear which posts these are. Okay, this looks nice, so I will stick to this API. Before we move on and create this component, I want to prepare this thread posts array as we don't have it yet. Because we need to find this data and we don't have them statically available anywhere, it makes sense to use a computed property. Here we want to return an array with all the posts that belong to this thread only. There are many ways to do that. I will look into the root posts object and use the filter function to grab the posts whose thread ID property is equal to the ID of the current thread. That should be perfect. Let's confirm that it works in the browser. Here I have found the component in our component tree, and you can see that we have this thread post computed property. It is an array that it includes 4 objects. These are the post objects that we will pass to our post list component. Notice here that it says anonymous component. If you want to give it a name so you can see it when debugging, you can do that by using the name property in your component. So here you could say name thread show. Then in your dev tools you can find your component using the name. Let's go ahead and create the post list component. Since this is not a page component, we will put it under the components directory. I will move the div with the class of post list from page thread show to the new post list components template. We have decided that this component will receive the array with a post to display. So let's add this prop. Posts should be required and type of array. And now let's update the template accordingly. In our v4, we now want to iterate and grab each post from the posts array. For the key, we can use the post ID. Inside the iteration, we use the post by ID helper method that we don't need anymore, as we have access to the post object directly. So we can replace this part with a post. Next, we use the user by ID method. Let's grab that method from the thread show component. We also need access to the source of truth for the users that currently is our source data file. So I will copy these parts from thread show too. That should be good. Let's go back to thread show and use our new post list. To do that, we just have to import and register the component. Before we test it in the browser, let's remove the code that we don't need anymore. We don't need to define the user's data. And we also don't need the method that finds a single user or a single post. We now do that inside our post list component. So that looks good. Let's check it out in the browser. Everything seems to work fine, and we don't have any errors in the console. That's great. Now our ThreadShow components template is super clean and acts like a guide for this page. You and other developers can understand what it does by spending 5 seconds reading the template. We could go a step further and break down the post list to use a post list item component, so we simplify this template and script too. Feel free to do that if you like. I will stick to rendering the posts inside the post list component for now.